It is that time of the show where we turn our attention over to the markets, and this week we caught up with University of Nebraska Ag Economist Elliott Dennis. Here's our conversation from earlier this week. Elliott, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on the program. Let's start our conversation here as we sit in December. Slaughter rates for cattle continue to decrease as we head into the holidays. Is that typical for this time of the year?
Yeah, generally you'd see a little bit of decrease. What we're seeing is kind of a large decrease in the slaughter. It's going to vary week to week. The issue that we're seeing is that just as feeder cattle prices are going up, feedlots are holding fed cattle back a little bit longer. That's why we're seeing the slaughter weights come up quite a bit. For example, our 5-year average is normally about 908 on steers. We're averaging about 955. So even over our 5-year average, we're almost 50 pounds heavier, and we're about 15 pounds heavier where we were last year. So slaughter weights are definitely up as feedlots are just kind of holding cattle back a little bit longer, and that's on the fed cattle side. But on the cow side, we're down actually quite a bit as well. So we're down about almost 20,000 head on a weekly basis, and it really just kind of has dropped off. There is some signs about like, well, why is that happening? Are people starting to hold back? Are they starting to say, okay, yes, we believe kind of these feeder cattle markets? I'm probably more in that camp, that I believe that kind of this is the first sign that we're finally going to start expanding. But what that's really done is kind of impact price, right? So we slow down slaughter, prices for slaughter cows are going to go up. Combine that with strong beef demand, and you got a perfect market where the market is really trying to incentivize people to sell. So we'll kind of see how the year kind of continues to finish out on the slaughter side.
Let's talk profitability for a second when it comes to the packers. As a livestock economist, I have to imagine you've been seeing the headlines about the different meat companies that have been shuttering some plants.
Yeah.
In the segment, a lot of the poultry side and on the pork side. What's your take of the situation right now?
Yeah, I think something has to break. Generally, the rule of thumb has been throughput on capacity. So we generally think about total pounds of production going through the system. We were at a situation even with reduced slaughter capacity but increased slaughter weights, total pounds of production was actually up a little bit. But in 2025, I don't think that's going to be quite the case. I think there is kind of this combination of slaughter weight and head capacity that needs to go through the plants for a number of reasons. Think of like equipment and processing chain speeds. And so I think we will kind of see something break. I'm not sure when it will be. We kind of have two dynamics going on there. The first is just increased pressure from the current market. Think of dilapidated plants, things that are maybe not technically efficient. And then we have these new set of plants starting to come up that will really start hitting in 2025 through 2027. And so if you're a kind of a meat processor, you can start to see what are some of the trade-offs. And really, I think in my mind, it's going to be what is going to be, the net gain from the new processing capacity that we're going to bring on versus kind of what's going to potentially roll off due to various efficiency reasons.
And here in local interest in Nebraska, that new plant in North Platte scheduled to come online here in 2025. They continue to make some substantial progress. Let's talk about the numbers in the cattle industry, namely the cattle on feed report. I'm sure you keep a close eye on those numbers. What's the latest one tell us?
Yeah, so I think when we think about kind of where expectations are at, when we think of on feed and marketing, that's kind of, we're all kind of in that same kind of boat, kind of where we should be at. The big number that we're going to be looking at really is placements. As we've seen in the feeder cattle market, prices have kind of really gone through the roof over the last couple of weeks. And really the idea is, okay, how many of those animals are actually going to enter the feed yard versus the ones that are actually going to go into stocking operations, and people are going to kind of arbitrage the weight gain on the cattle. And so I think those ranges are anywhere from about 92% to about 99% on placements from year over year. So for us, it's going to be kind of an interesting, how many of those actually went into the feed yard versus not. And I think that will tell us a lot about future cattle flow and really point to the January USDA cattle inventory report when we start to think about how many of those animals are outside of the feed yard waiting to enter versus the ones that are on feed.
Do you think that January report will maybe turn things around over the past few years, start to see an increase in the size of the U.S. herd?
I think right now they're still kind of sorting that out. I don't think we're going to see that big of a jump in this year, the 2025 January. 2026 is when we'll see that big jump. And of course, there's obviously changes if We're not aware of what's going to happen in the January inventory report. There's going to be changes in the number of states reported and all that kind of implications. So look for that report at the end of January.
Let's jump topics. How about word on highly pathogenic avian influenza? Not only in the poultry sector, continues to see that spreading here in Nebraska and other states right now, but also continues to be impacting the dairy sector. Your thoughts?
Yeah, really, I think our concern is it going to make the jump from kind of dairy cattle to beef cattle, and what that might ultimately mean for consumable meat products. They've done a lot of testing on kind of dairy milk and kind of trying to think about, is there transferability of avian influenza to humans? I think for us on the beef side, it says, okay, will that transfer to beef cattle? Definitely going to have an impact as it continues to grow. We know avian influenza has had an impact upon the poultry market. Just look at eggs, starting to impact it. I think we will see some impact on the milk side. And so for us, what I'm watching for is, where is it going to be on the beef cattle side? Is it going to come over? How big? And what the consumer reaction will be to that? I think that's the big story to watch in 2025.